After 12 years of marriage, my wife said, he deserved to know. That's how I found out our son wasn't mine. I am a man of 38. 12 years of marriage, 10 years of fatherhood, and it all exploded on a quiet Sunday morning at our kitchen table. No shouting, no drama from the outside. Just my wife, Laura, sitting across from me, with her hands wrapped around a cold mug, staring at a point on the wall. She said she could not lie anymore. She said he deserved to know. She said I also deserved to know. And then she told me that Ethan, the boy I had raised since the day he was born, was not my biological son. I did not understand at first. My brain did this thing where it refused to connect the words together. I heard my wife saying that our son was not mine, but it felt like she was talking about some other family. I remember focusing on ridiculous details, like a stain on the table, the sound of the fridge, a bird outside. My heart was pounding so hard that I could feel it in my throat. Laura tried to explain. She said there had been a mistake, a night during the first year of our marriage, before we bought the house, before the stable routine, before the parent-teacher meetings and the shared calendars. She said she had been confused, lonely, angry at me, and she had slept with someone else. She said that, when she found out she was pregnant, she convinced herself that I was the father because that was the only way to keep going. She admitted she had always had a doubt. She said she had tried to forget it and bury it. Then, a few months ago, when Ethan started asking questions about genetics at school, about why he had certain traits, about why he looked a bit different from me, the doubt came back stronger. She said she broke. She took a hair from his brush and sent it to a lab along with one of mine, behind my back. The result came back clear. No biological link. She had been living with that result for weeks, pretending nothing had changed, until it finally crushed her. As she talked, my chest felt tight. I wanted to stand up, to leave, to scream, but my body felt heavy. I heard her say that she never meant to hurt me, that she loved me, that I was still Ethan's real father in every way that mattered. She said that sentence about him again, that he deserved to know. I knew she meant Ethan, but I heard something else. I heard that she felt more guilt toward him than toward me. That hit me hard. My mind went back to the beginning, before Ethan, before this house, before this kitchen table. I met Laura when I was 24. She was 23. We worked in the same building, different companies, same elevator every morning. She was the kind of woman people noticed easily. Confident, organized, always with a file under her arm, and a plan in her head. I was quieter, more careful. We started talking, then having lunch together, then spending weekends together. I knew she had an ex who still hovered around. She called him a complicated story. His name was Adam. She said they had been together on and off for years. She said he was charming but unreliable, that he disappeared when things got serious. When we started officially dating, she told me it was over for good. I believed her because I was in love and because I wanted to believe that life could be simple if you worked hard and chose the right person. We married 2 years later. It was a small ceremony. My parents liked her. Her parents liked me. Everything felt solid, like we were doing things in the right order. Work, wedding, then the idea of a family. I had grown up in a stable home. My parents were not perfect, but they stayed together. I wanted the same for my future kids. During our first year of marriage, we argued more than we expected. Money, careers, time, small frustrations. One period was especially tense. I was working late on a project that could get me a promotion, and she felt neglected. She said I was never home, that I barely listened when she talked. I remember promising to do better, to be more present. I did not realize how deep her frustration went. Now, sitting at the kitchen table 12 years later, I learned what had happened during that time. While I was trying to impress my boss and secure a future for us, she had gone back to Adam for a night. She did not use that exact sentence, but that was what she was describing. A message, a meeting, a weak moment, a line crossed, then guilt, then silence. She said that, when she realized she was pregnant, she did the math and understood there was a possibility that the baby was not mine. She said she never told me because she was afraid I would leave, afraid she would destroy everything our family saw in us as a couple. She chose to close her eyes and move forward. The pregnancy became our story. The future child became ours on paper and in pictures. I thought of Ethan's birth, the way she had squeezed my hand in the hospital, the way the nurse had placed that small red-faced baby in my arms, the way I had looked at his tiny fingers, and thought that my life had just been split into 2 parts, before him and after him. I remembered how proud I was when I signed the birth certificate as his father. I had always liked that moment. It felt official, strong, meaningful. Now it felt like a document attached to a lie. I also remembered all the comments over the years. People who said Ethan looked like Laura. People who joked that he did not really have my eyes. I had heard it so often that it became a running joke. I used to say that genes are weird. That maybe he took more from her side of the family. I never felt threatened by that. Now every one of those comments replayed in my head with a different taste. I wondered if Laura had flinched inside each time, if she had felt that old doubt wake up, then push it away again. At some point I stood up from the table without a word, and walked out of the house. I grabbed my keys and went to the car. I did not even know where I was going. I ended up in a supermarket parking lot, sitting behind the wheel, staring at people going in and out with bags. Normal lives. People buying milk and bread, checking lists, arguing over brands. I was sitting there with the feeling that my whole identity had been ripped apart in an hour. I thought about Ethan, 10 years old. He loved science videos and football. He had a loud laugh and a habit of touching my shoulder when he wanted my attention. When he was small, he used to run to the door when I came home, shouting my name, jumping into my arms. When he was scared at night, he called me, not his mother. When he broke a toy, he came to me with the pieces. Every memory hurt and comforted me at the same time. Nothing had changed in his behavior. He still saw me as his father. The betrayal was not coming from him. It was coming from the woman I had trusted most. The one person who knew how much I wanted to be a good father, because I had told her about it 1,000 times. I stayed in the car for hours, ignoring Laura's messages and calls. She wrote that she was sorry, that she understood if I hated her, that she had wanted to protect our family. She wrote that she had failed. She wrote again that Ethan deserved to know the truth, and that she did not want him to grow up in a lie. Each message made me colder instead of softer. I did not answer. When I finally drove home, it was dark. Ethan was already asleep. His backpack was by the door, his shoes thrown in the usual place. Everything looked normal on the surface. Laura was in the living room, waiting. Her eyes were swollen. She looked like she had aged 10 years in one day. She tried to talk, but I walked past her and went straight to the bathroom. I needed a shower, not for my body, but for my head. I wanted to wash off this feeling of being covered in someone else's decisions. The next days were a blur of silence and short, tense interactions. I avoided looking at her for too long because every time I did, I saw two versions of her, the one I married and the one who stayed quiet for 10 years about the most important thing in our life. She tried to explain again, to repeat that she always hoped Ethan was mine, that the doubt had not meant she loved me less. The more she tried to justify herself, the more I felt like a background character in my own marriage. At night, I lay awake thinking about that sentence. He deserved to know. Did she mean me or Ethan when she said it? She kept repeating it with that same guilty face. It made me feel like I was an afterthought in her conscience, like she had carried the weight mainly because of our son, and I was a secondary victim that came with the package. Meanwhile, Ethan started to notice that something was wrong. He asked why I seemed distant, why I did not join them on the sofa, why I was quiet at dinner. I could not tell him the truth, but I could not fake it either. So I told him I was tired from work. He accepted it at first, but kids sense more than we think. A week after the confession, Laura told me she had done something else. She said that before she told me, she had contacted Adam. She had kept his number all these years, hidden in an old email account. She said she had written to him, explained that there was a possibility he had a son, and that the boy was 10. She said he had responded. He wanted to know more. He wanted a test. He wanted to see Ethan. That news hit me harder than the first confession. It was not just about the truth anymore. It was about invasion. She had opened the door to another man in our family without asking me. A man I did not know. A man who had not been there for a single football match, a single school event, a single fever at night. He had suddenly become part of the story because she felt guilty, and because science had sent a paper with numbers and charts. My mind jumped to 100 scenarios. This man demanding rights. This man standing next to me at school plays. This man giving Ethan his last name. This man one day being called dad by the boy, who still ran to hug me. I felt disgust, fear, humiliation. I asked Laura how she could bring him into this without even telling me first. She said she had been scared I would try to hide the truth to keep things as they were. She said she was trying to do the right thing, even if it was late. She insisted that Ethan had a right to know his biological father. I heard the words, but all I could feel was betrayal layered on betrayal. She had taken from me my role as the only father figure without warning. She also admitted that the test between Ethan and Adam had already been done. A simple swab at a clinic. The result was clear. Biological father and son. She had known that before she told me anything. For a while, I just stared at her, trying to keep myself from sinking deeper into anger. She had not only hidden a past mistake, she had run a secret investigation into our family, confirmed everything, and then dropped it all on me when she could not handle it anymore. I felt like my life had been a stage built on rotten wood. It had looked solid from the outside, but every step now made it crack. I started imagining the early years again with this new information. The ultrasound pictures on the fridge. The way her face softened when she looked at them. The way she sometimes seemed more distant with me during the pregnancy. I had thought it was hormones and stress. Maybe it was also fear that the child inside her would come out with someone else's face. I remembered a moment when Ethan was about 2, and we ran into one of Laura's old friends in a park. She had known Adam. She stared at Ethan for a second and said he looked familiar. At the time, it had felt like nothing. Now that memory burned. A few days later, Laura told me that Adam wanted to meet me. Not Ethan yet. He said he did not want to go behind my back. He wanted to talk as men, father to father. That phrase made me sick. For me, the word father is not a title you get because of DNA. It is something you build, day after day, with sleepless nights, school meetings, money worries, and countless small moments. But in the eyes of the law and biology, he now had a claim. We agreed to meet in a cafe on the other side of town. I did not want anyone we knew to see us. I did not tell my parents. I could not bear their disappointment and anger yet. It was already heavy enough in my chest. The day of the meeting, I sat at a small table, my hands clenched. Every time the door opened, my body tensed. When Adam finally walked in, I recognized him from an old photo I had seen once by accident on Laura's laptop years ago. Tall, confident, a little too relaxed. Somebody who had probably always gotten away with enough charm to soften any damage. He sat across from me and started talking. He said he had no idea Ethan existed until Laura contacted him. He said he had been shocked, angry, then excited. He said he had done the test because he needed to be sure. He said he had cried when he saw the result. He said he wanted to be involved. He kept using that word, involve. As he talked, I had a strange feeling. It was like he was talking about a project, not a boy. Something new in his life that had given him a sense of purpose. I was furious, but I also understood one thing clearly: he did not plan to disappear. Not now that he knew. He said one more thing that stayed with me. He said that Ethan deserved to know who he was. It was the same sentence Laura had used, in a different voice. I started to hate that sentence, because every time someone said it, it sounded like they were talking about a happy, honest thing. But for me, it meant tearing apart the only identity I had known as a father. I left the meeting with a headache and a deeper sense of dread. When I got home that evening, Ethan was in the living room, building something with plastic bricks. He looked up at me, with his usual mixture of expectation and trust. He asked if I could help him. I felt my knees weaken. Here was the boy I had held when he had diarrhea at 3 in the morning, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the boy who had once hugged me so hard I almost fell down. And somewhere in the city, in an apartment I had never seen, there was a man with matching DNA, who now wanted a place in his life. Laura said we could not delay the conversation with Ethan forever. She said he felt the tension. She said he was old enough to understand. She told me we should sit him down and explain that the man he knew as dad would always be his dad, but that there was also another man who had given him his genes. She tried to make it sound simple. I wanted to scream. Nothing about this was simple. I knew we would have to tell him soon. The thought of watching his face while we broke his reality made me sick. I started to feel trapped in a countdown I had never agreed to. At night, when Ethan was sleeping and the house was quiet, I lay awake with the question spinning in my mind. Was I going to lose my son, piece by piece, to a stranger and to my wife's old lie? A few days before we planned to talk to Ethan, an envelope arrived in our mailbox. No sender name, just our address. Laura brought it to me with a tense face. Inside, there was a letter written by Adam. Not to me, not to Laura, to Ethan. He wrote about how he had just learned that he was Ethan's biological father. He wrote about wanting to get to know him one day, about hoping Ethan would not hate him for being absent without knowing. He wrote that he had always wanted a son, and that he felt like life had finally given him one. Laura admitted she had given Adam our address so he could send it when the time came. So while I was drowning in shock and betrayal, they had already been organizing the next step, planning how to introduce this man into my son's life. I stood there with that letter in my hand, shaking, realizing that this was no longer just a secret inside our marriage. It was a written reality, ready to break the heart of a 10-year-old boy who trusted us. That was the moment I understood that whatever happened next would change Ethan forever, and that I might not be able to protect him from it. The plan was simple on paper and brutal in real life. We would sit Ethan down, together, and tell him that there was something important about his story that we had not shared until now. We would say that the man he called Dad was the one who had raised him, and loved him from the beginning, and that nothing would change that. Then we would add that there was another man somewhere who shared his blood, who now knew he existed and wanted to meet him one day. Every part of that plan felt wrong to me, but the truth was already out of the box. There were lab results, letters, and two adults who had already built their own version of what was right. The only one still stuck in confusion was me. The evening we chose for the talk, I felt like I was walking to an execution. Ethan sat on the couch, looking at us with curiosity. Laura started talking. I watched her carefully, afraid she would try to soften her role in this. She did not go into details about the affair, but she did say that she had made a mistake a long time ago, before Ethan was born. She said that because of that mistake, the man sitting in front of him, the man he called Dad, was not his biological father. Ethan's eyes went straight to me. I could see the questions forming and dying in his head. I told him that I was still his father in every way that mattered, that I had chosen him every day since the moment he was born, and that I would keep doing that. I promised him that I was not going anywhere. I could hear my voice shake as I said it, but I meant every word. Then we told him about Adam. We said there was a man who had given him his DNA, who had only just learned he existed, and who wanted to know him one day if Ethan agreed. We tried to keep it neutral, to leave the choice to him, later, but he was 10. He did not have the emotional tools to process all that. He just heard that someone else was his father too, and his world tilted. He asked if I had known all along. I told him I had only found out recently. He asked if his grandparents knew. I said no. He asked if his name would change. I said no. He asked if we were going to divorce. Neither of us answered quickly enough. He saw it. He saw the hesitation, the cracks, the fear. He cried, not a loud tantrum. It was a quiet, shaking sort of crying that seemed too heavy for his small body. I felt something inside me tear. I wanted to scoop him up and erase everything we had just said, but it was too late. The truth was out. That night, he slept in my bed. He said he could not sleep alone. He asked me again if I would still come to his football games, if I would still help him with his homework, if I would still be there when he was sick. I told him yes to everything. I told him that none of that would change. Inside, I knew that many things were already changing. The following weeks were strange. Ethan became quieter. He watched me with a different kind of attention. He started asking random questions about when he was a baby. Who was there? Who changed his diapers? Who took him to the doctor? Each time, I had answers, because I had been there. That fact seemed to calm him a bit, but the idea of Adam sat in the background like a shadow. My own parents eventually found out. Not from us at first. My mother overheard part of a conversation between Ethan and Laura on the phone. He mentioned that he had two fathers now. She called me immediately, her voice sharp with panic. I had to sit them down and explain everything. My father's face went red with anger. He said I had been played for a decade. He said Laura had used me as a shield, as a provider. My mother cried and repeated that she had always had a bad feeling about that first year of marriage, when Laura seemed distant. They asked me if I was going to leave her. I told them I did not know. It was the truth. Some days I woke up determined to file for divorce. Other days I saw Ethan's face, and felt guilty for even thinking about leaving. I did not want him to think I was abandoning him because of something he did not choose. Meanwhile, Laura kept pushing the idea that Ethan should at least talk to Adam online. She said we did not need to rush into in-person meetings. She suggested a video call, supervised, controlled. She said it would help Ethan see that this man was not a monster, just another part of his story. For her, it seemed like a step toward cleaning up the lie. For me, it felt like inviting a stranger into our living room. Ethan surprised me by saying he wanted to see the man who shared his DNA. He said he was scared but also curious. He said his head was full of questions he could not ask us. Hearing that hurt, but I could not blame him. We had dumped a huge secret on him, and then expected him to sit with it quietly. The first video call happened on a Saturday afternoon. Ethan sat between us on the couch, the laptop on the coffee table. When the screen lit up and Adam's face appeared, my stomach turned. There was a strange resemblance. The shape of their jaw, the way their eyebrows moved. It was like looking at a possible future version of my son, built from someone else's blueprint. Adam spoke gently. He said he was happy to see Ethan. He said he was sorry for not being there. He repeated that he had not known. Ethan listened, barely saying anything. After a few minutes, Ethan asked him what he did for a living, where he lived, if he had other kids. Normal questions, but heavy in this context. I watched the two of them talk, and felt like a visitor. I hated that feeling. When the call ended, Ethan said he felt weird. He said he did not hate Adam, but he did not feel close to him either. He said it was like talking to a distant relative he had never met before. I clung to that description like a lifeline. Adam was not his dad in his heart. Not yet. Maybe never. The tension between Laura and me kept growing. Every decision about Ethan now had an extra layer. School meetings, health questions, weekend plans. Behind every topic, there was another question. Should Adam be involved in this? Laura seemed to think that including him slowly was the right thing to do. I thought she was trying to ease her guilt by giving him space he had not earned. Our arguments got harsher. Even if we tried not to raise our voices in front of Ethan, she accused me of trying to erase the truth. She said I wanted to pretend nothing had changed. I accused her of turning our life into a project to fix her conscience, no matter the cost. She said I was punishing her by staying, but closing off emotionally. She was not wrong. I was there physically, but something in me had cut the connection with her. One night, after another argument behind a half-closed door, Ethan came to my room with tears in his eyes. He asked if we were going to break up. He said he did not care about Deanna. He just wanted things to stop feeling tense. He told me he felt like everything was his fault because it was his existence that was at the center of the mess. Hearing that crushed me. I told him it was not his fault in any way. I told him that the adults had made the mistakes, not him. I meant it. But it did not erase the heaviness from his face. A few months after the first video call, Adam suggested meeting in person, in a park. In the daytime, nothing dramatic. He said it would help Ethan put a real person behind the screen. He also said something that made me want to throw my phone. He said he did not want to be just a friendly stranger forever. He said he wanted a real relationship with his son. That word again, relationship. There was already a relationship between Ethan and me, built every day for 10 years. But biology had given him a shortcut into the story. Laura supported the idea of a meeting. She said she would be there, that I could be there too if I wanted. She said this did not have to be a competition. She kept using calm words while ignoring the storm inside me. The day of the meeting, I watched my son walk toward a bench in the park where Adam was waiting. I walked with them, but I felt like I was standing slightly outside my own life. Adam stood up, smiled, and greeted Ethan. He looked at me with a careful nod, like we were partners in some strange agreement. I wanted to leave. I stayed because I knew that if I walked away, Ethan would feel abandoned. They talked about school, football, hobbies. Adam tried to find common ground, to create little threads of connection. Every time Ethan laughed, a small part of me clenched. I was happy that he could be relaxed, but I was also terrified of losing ground without even realizing it. After the meeting, Ethan said he liked Adam. Not as much as he liked me, he added quickly, like he felt he needed to reassure me. He said it was interesting to see where some of his features came from. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Before all this, when people asked where he got his smile or his habits, I never felt the need to link them to anyone. He was just Ethan. Now even he was starting to define himself in terms of who had given him which piece of himself. At home, the gap between Laura and me turned into a valley. We tried therapy for a while. The therapist listened carefully, asked us to describe what we each felt. I realized that for Laura, this whole process was partly about honesty and partly about escape. She had lived so long with the secret that exposure felt like a twisted form of relief. For me, each new step made the wound deeper. I told the therapist that I could not look at Laura without seeing 10 years of lies, layered under every happy memory. I said that, when I thought about our wedding, our honeymoon, our first apartment, all I saw now was a woman who already knew there was a chance I was not the father and stayed silent. Laura cried and said she had been young and scared. She said she had convinced herself that Ethan was mine because that was the only way she could live with herself. She repeated that she loved me, that she loved Ethan, that she had tried to bury the past. The therapist asked if I could forgive her. I did not answer. The silence was an answer on its own. Eventually, the question of our marriage stopped being a theory and became a decision. Living together in this half-destroyed relationship was hurting Ethan more than we wanted to admit. He had started to have headaches, trouble at school, bursts of anger that did not fit his usual nature. His teacher told us he seemed distracted and sad. She asked if something was happening at home. We decided to separate, not because I did not love my son, but because I could not share a house with a woman who had made me feel like a stand-in for another man for 10 years. We told Ethan together. We said we needed time apart to stop hurting each other and him. He took it hard. He said he had known it was coming, but hearing it out loud still broke him. When I moved to a small apartment across town, I took very few things. Some clothes, a few pieces of furniture, and every picture where Ethan and I were together. I could not leave those behind. They were proof that whatever biology said, I had been there. The legal part of the separation was complicated. On paper, I was still Ethan's legal father. I had signed his birth certificate. I had raised him. The law did not erase that easily. Adam had no automatic rights, but he could ask for some if he wanted. For now, he said he did not want to go to court. He preferred to build his connection gradually, without destroying mine. I did not fully trust that, but I was too tired to fight everyone at once. My focus was on one thing, keeping my place in Ethan's life. We arranged shared custody between Laura and me. Ethan spent 1 week with her, 1 week with me. Adam saw him some weekends, mostly when Ethan was at Laura's. They went to the park, to the movies, sometimes to a sports event. I hated the idea, but I had to respect Ethan's choices too. He was not a possession to fight over. He was a person trying to make sense of a broken picture. Over time, Ethan started talking about Adam more casually. He called him by his first name. He called me Dad. That difference mattered to me. It was the line I held on to when everything else felt unstable. My relationship with Laura turned into something cold and practical. Messages about schedules, school events, health issues. No more shared jokes. No more affectionate looks. She tried, once or twice, to start a deeper conversation. She said she still loved me, that maybe in time we could rebuild something. I shut it down. I told her that trust was not a piece of furniture you could glue back together after smashing it. She cried again, but I did not move. I had cried enough. My parents stopped talking to Laura completely. For them, she was the person who had broken their son and shaken their grandson's world. They tolerated the fact that Ethan saw her because they knew he needed his mother, but they kept their distance from her. Every time they saw Ethan, they treated him exactly as before. Their love for him never changed. That helped. It reminded me that not everything was destroyed. Some bonds had resisted the shock. As for me, I live in a kind of permanent in-between. I am a father without a biological link, and a husband without a marriage. Some days, when Ethan is with me, and we cook together or watch a match, I forget everything else. He talks about his day, about a joke at school, about a friend, and I feel normal. I correct his homework, remind him to brush his teeth, tell him to go to bed at a reasonable time. These ordinary moments are the ones that keep me alive. Then there are days when he is not there. I sit in a quiet apartment and my head goes dark. I replay all the years before the confession and see small details that now look different. A look between Laura and her phone. A hesitation in her voice when someone commented that Ethan had her eyes, not mine. A moment when she changed the topic quickly if anyone mentioned Adam. I realize how blind I was, and I hate myself a bit for that. People sometimes tell me I should move on, start a new life, maybe meet someone else. I do not feel ready. The idea of opening up again, of trusting someone with my heart and future, feels dangerous. My standards for honesty are now so high that I am not sure anyone can pass them. I also carry a strange guilt, not for something I did, but for something I could not prevent. Ethan will grow up with this story attached to his name. The boy who found out his biological father was someone else. The boy whose parents broke up because of a secret. I know kids live through worse, but it still hurts. I wanted to give him a simple family story. Instead, I helped build something complicated without knowing it. I still see Adam sometimes. At school events, in parks, at birthdays. We are polite. We do not argue in front of Ethan. We both know that any open conflict would hurt him. There is a strange, unspoken understanding between us. He knows he arrived late to the story. I know he did not choose the timing, but none of that erases the fact that, for 10 years, I did the work he never did. Once, after a football match, Ethan ran toward me and jumped into my arms, still sweaty and laughing. Adam stood nearby, watching. I saw a flash of something on his face. Regret, maybe. Jealousy, maybe. I do not know. At that moment, I felt both anger and pity for him. He has the DNA, but not the history. And history matters. If you ask me now who Ethan's father is, I answer without hesitation that it is me. I am the one he calls when he is scared, when he needs help with a project, when he wants advice. I am the one who remembers the scar on his knee, and the time he fell off his bike. But if you ask me if I have completely healed from what my wife did, the answer is no. There is a part of me that stayed in that kitchen, at that table, on that Sunday morning, listening to her say that he deserved to know and realizing that my whole life had been rearranged without my consent. I did not lose my son, but I lost the simple story of how he came into my life. I lost the belief that love and commitment automatically protect you from betrayal. I lost the woman I thought I had married. What remains is a boy who still calls me dad, even after learning the truth. And a man trying to build a future on a floor that cracked but did not completely collapse. There is no clean moral in this, only a complicated reality. Sometimes the truth does not set you free, it just forces you to live with a different kind of weight. Follow me for more stories.